Hello, hello. Good morning, everyone. All right, I think we are good to go. We're live. Hey, Bad Cat, Ilias, good to have you here. Alrighty, so we have the chat up and running. Everything is good to go. Let's go ahead and get started straight away. I have a few things that I would like to cover. And yeah, later down the track, I'll show you something else that I wanted to share with you. So this is the character that we started working on last week. Most of the things that, like, everything is just put together into pieces, obviously into subtools, right? But everything that you see, I think up to, yeah, most of the things are kind of like in a nice geometry base. Let me just I'm gonna go to all low. There we go. Turn on polyframe, turn off polypaint, and I'm just gonna do a quick render here just to show you what we have so far. Yeah, so everything that we've set up last week, or a couple of weeks ago, sorry, is it has a nice decent geometry. I might do a retopology for the arms because, you know, it has like a bit of a stretching of the polygons, but everything is pretty decent in terms of the topology. So everything has subdivision levels. Some of the pieces that I haven't actually sculpted or tweaked, they have the dynamic subdivision. So let me just go back to high, turn on poly paint. So for instance, let's see. Yeah, so this part of the head, which is kind of like I don't know the term, but it's one of those like the type of coat that Kenny from South Park wears, that has like a fluffy thing around it, kind of like I think it's called like the windbreaker or something like that. I can't remember. So I haven't done that part, but that's gonna be the idea, where you can only kind of like see the eyes, or like, you know, that part of the face. So that's what I'm going to go for it, because at the moment it looks almost like a balaclava, which is not necessarily what I want. So yeah, what I was saying is that this part I haven't actually sculpted anything. So if I go into solo mode, it's still like pretty basic, and it has the dynamic subdivision. So this one doesn't have subdivision levels. It's just so that I can see it almost at the same level of polish as the rest of the pieces. So that's just kind of like give you a quick update from what we've been working on, in case you want to catch up. Like the previous video should be already up in the channel, so make sure that you watch it if you want. So we're gonna concentrate today on adding a couple of, you know, extra we'll say extra assets, depending on how we go with time. But the idea is just to complete this character, just show you a couple more interesting techniques that you can use in, again, if you're following along doing the same type of character, you can do the same thing for that. Otherwise, for the techniques that I try to show you in these streams are, generally speaking, something that you can apply to something else, right? To whatever you want. Yeah, so let's go ahead and start with what I just mentioned, that windbreaker thing. So for that, I'm just going to bring in a Ring 3D. By the way, some of you guys, or I think last week, someone asked about the difference between append and insert, and that is just it's the same thing. It's to insert a new piece of geometry, a new subtool. The difference is that when you append, it will be appended at the bottom of the list. So it's very useful when you have like lots of different subtools, and you know, you want to just keep things organized. The insert one will just put it below whatever you have selected. So if I select the arms and I click on insert, I'm just going to click on Ring 3D. It'll just put it below it, but it's exactly the same thing. Let me just delete that. If I just click on append, see Ring 3D, it does the same thing, but it just puts it at the bottom. So it's just a quick way to keep things organized, in case you didn't know, but it's the same thing. All right, so with that ring selected, I'm just gonna rotate things around, and I have perspective off, so let's just place that there. So that's that's kind of like what I was what I'm after. like a funny type of you know what, yeah, sometimes just when I do these type of things and I start blocking you know, the basics of the volumes with very primitive stuff, that's when I like think about new ideas as well. So I just thought, oh, this could be one of those scuba diving type of thing with a glass in there, which, you know, might be interesting, maybe like a variation of this character. But anyway, let's just do what I mentioned. So I'm just gonna place this in there. And in order to adjust it so that it conforms to the shape of this rounded area, I'm gonna use deformers. So probably what I'll do is I'm just gonna hide everything but these meshes. So a very simple thing that you can do is just hold the Shift key and click on the visibility icon for whatever subtool you have selected. So that would hide everything. It's kind of like going into solo mode, and then you can just turn on the ones that you wanna use. The eyes. You know what? Let me just organize this a little bit. And yeah, I forgot that we already had like some visual groups. These visual groups allow you to isolate different pieces. So yeah, fair enough. So let's let's just do that. I'm gonna turn back on everything. I'm gonna go to visibility group. Let's go for 8. So I don't remember which ones I had. And for visibility group 8, I'm just gonna enable these things. And that's it. All right. So now we can be working like the full body character, and then if we click V8, we just see these portions. Cool. Hang on, let me see the chat. Hey Simon, good to have you here. Hey Javier, awesome to have you here. It's been a while. Irene, how you doing? Link, slow-mo, awesome, great guys. So if you have, by the way, forgot to mention that, but if you have any questions throughout the chat, throughout the stream, put it in the chat. I'll be happy to answer that if I can. All right, so with that in mind, what I'll do is I'm gonna bring in a deformer. So I'm gonna click on the gear icon. I'm gonna from the Gizmo 3D, and there's a few things that we can use. So the first one, which is kind of like the first pass, I suppose, would be the arc deformer. You can use that. I'll show you a couple of techniques actually. So the arc deformer allows you to, from whatever point or perspective you want to use, you can click on this green cone and it just rotates it a little bit like that. And maybe from the top, you can do this, right? And if it's stretching a little bit outside of that kind of like boundary box, I'll bring in my Epic pen just to give you an example of what these cones actually do. Cool. So basically, these green, yeah, let me just try to explain this. What would be the best way to show you this? Yeah, so essentially, let's change to green. The green cone, right? That's the one that gives you that arc, right? That's why I pull this one in that direction and it creates that arc. So if I keep pulling this, it's going to do it almost like if the pivot point is here. I don't know if like that's an easy way to see it or to understand it as a pivot point, but basically if I keep going, if I keep pushing this like that, you know, going forward, that's a horrible color, going forward like this, then ZBrush is gonna take this and create an arc that goes around like that. So it's gonna go outside of these bounding boxes or that box of the deformer. Okay, so that's kind of like the expected and the default behavior, but that's why you have the white cone. And the white cone is kind of like the profile. So what this one is going to do is, instead of it's just basically going to change that pivot point of deformation. So you with the white cone, you can turn it from being something like that to being, you know, something like this. Right? It's just gonna reduce it. It's just gonna be easier if I just show you. Just wanted to give you a heads up. So if I keep going up all the way, you'll see it just goes around it. But then I can take these white cone radius and change that. So it's it's pretty helpful in that sense. Anyway, let's just go back in here and we can just play around with that a little bit more. Right, so we have that nice nice arc, which is perfect. Let's click on accept. So that's good. The next step, I mean, you could also use other deformers, but for this is not the only way of doing it. But if I go ahead and use something like the let's go for soft deformer soft. You can also use the deformer hard, but this is better for like hard surface stuff or things that have like planes. So the soft deformer is just gonna be a lattice or a lattice. That's how I think that's how you pronounce it. And this one allows you to create these points. So I'm just going to create a couple more points, a couple more lines, subdivisions, and each one of these yellow cones allows you to do that. Now from this angle, I can just reduce it. I actually don't need that many. And from the horizontal ones, let's just add a couple. Oops. Yeah, let's actually add a few more. Okay. The more points that you add, the harder it would be to control it, like with anything else. But in this case, I want to be able to manipulate just the top areas without affecting the sides as much. So that's why I added a few more points in here. And that's it. The way that this works is with the masking brushes. So at the moment, if I go ahead and move things around with the gizmo, everything is gonna be movable, right? So with the masking, you can use any mask brush. I think generally speaking, I use the mask lasso, but basically this allows you to mask areas that you wanna affect. So I'm gonna clear the mask, and then I'm gonna mask out just the sides, right? And you see that it hides those white points, and then I'm gonna take the gizmo and I'm only gonna affect those, right? And you see it just squishes things down. If you want to maintain a little bit more of the volume here, maybe we can hide or mask those points in there, and then I can just push these ones down like so, right? And then do the same thing with the top one. So by the way, this is another way of doing it. You can mask the ones that you want to use and then invert the mask by holding Control and clicking on the canvas. Or if you want to do it faster, you can hold Control, mask, and then hold the Alt key before you let go. And that's kind of like inverting the mask. And yeah, that's basically the same thing. Oops. And for some reason, we just enable symmetry. Oh, hang on, sorry. Let's do it one at a time, because if you do it at the same time, if you do it, if you select, let's say you select those points, right? So the gizmo immediately is going to go to that area, and then if I select a couple more, then I have the gizmo in here, but then I won't be able to do it almost like proportionally. So one thing you can do is just select all of them, right? And that the gizmo remains there, and then hide the ones in the center. Oops. Or mask the ones in the center. So that way you have masked everything but the two ones at the top and at the bottom, and the gizmo remains in the same area. So we can do this type of thing. So we can just bring this one closer. Put the mask. But yeah, I think as a blocking, as an early stage, that works pretty well. Let's click on accept and enable symmetry. And we can use the move brush to quickly adjust this a bit more, just to try to maintain that sort of volume all around. All right, and then I think I'm just gonna push it down a bit more. And let's go back to V1 so we can see everything. All right, so I think this works. This is going to be the base of that fluffy area, and then I'm just gonna add lots of stylized clumps of hair with geometry. Cool. So we can just go ahead and select the color, dynamic, fill object. So now it looks. I mean, this is gonna be a different color actually. Just we can go for a something like that. Yeah, that should be fine. Let's go ahead and do the clumps, the hair. That's pretty fun, and I'm sure you guys are going to enjoy that technique. I'm just thinking that this thing has quite a bit of volume. So what I'll do, I'm just gonna use the edge polish to just flatten things a bit with a large brush, like that, and then use the smooth brush to smooth it out and do another pass. This is just to reduce a bit of the volume. And we can use the move brush as well, just to embed this even more. There we go. I think that will be fine for a base. Let's go ahead and select the. We can do a few different things. I mean, if you already are familiar with the curve alphas, we can do that. I'm gonna append a cube, and that cube is just gonna be a dummy file so that I can basically do this. And I'm gonna convert it into a Q cube. So for most of you guys, that Q cube is on the initialize palette. You can click on Q cube, and that's basically gonna take that and make it into a simple cube that is hidden somewhere inside. So that's perfect. And yeah, so we can enable symmetry and then use this tool to just create, you know, hair like this if you wanted to. But yeah, that's not the idea. I want to make it a bit more stylized and simple. So you can do that. What I'll do is I'm going to use the curve multi-tube. Oh, actually, let's just use the normal tube, right? So this is what you get if you use that tool. By default, if you do this, you'll see that ZBrush just place it kind of like in a flat surface, almost like in a flat plane. So whatever you click, if I do it, let's say if I click around here on the head and do this, that's one way to do it. If I click here, it's gonna be 3 different planes. So in other words, because I clicked in all of these points, ZBrush is from the angle or from the camera that I'm drawing these tubes, is keeping that in a single plane, right? So you can see it's 3 different planes. So what you can do, let me undo that, is go to the picker in here, this picker palette, and go to, depth, and change 1C to continuous C. So continuous C, we've talked about this before in previous streams, basically continuously analyzes the surface. So it's just going to go, following the surface. So I can just do that, and you'll see it's just following that surface. So that's the first thing to tweak for what I'm going to show you. The next thing is the stroke. So just going to put that stroke here. I'm going to change the size, and I'm going to control the size with this curve follow. So if I open this one like so, and let's just draw one line. Let's click on size. Let's draw one line. You'll see, that basically this brush is starting from 0 or like very, very thin and going towards the right, going to the full size. So that's what this profile is doing. If I flip it, it's going to be the opposite. So if I click to update, it's going to start big and then go to 0. So let's go ahead and update this. So I'm just going to start with something like this. So that's those 2 points are going to give me the initial and the beginning and the end, relatively small sizes, like tapered. And I'm going to click to add another point just to add the center. So if I update now, we get this, type of shapes, which is pretty cool. And I think that's roughly what I want to do. We can also adjust the influence of these points by dragging that outer yellow circle. So if I click on, if I hover over the one in the middle and I click on that point, you can change that influence. You can make it really sharp or not. So I'm just gonna make it a bit larger and do the opposite for this one. So select this point and then just reduce that influence a bit more. It's barely visible, the changes, but they're there. Cool. So that's one thing. The final thing that I'd like to do for this brush, just to tweak it into these stylized clumps of hair, would be to change the intensity. So by default, it's using the Z intensity, and that is, let me just show you something. So the Z intensity at 100, that gives you, like if you look at these shapes, like the profile, it would be like this, right? Like a full circle, where the curve is right in the middle, basically. So this is what you get. So it's like a full cylinder. With the Z intensity to, let's say, 50 roughly, the profile is going to be more like this, right? So with 50, you can like push the top and bottom area of that. It's not necessarily the top and bottom, but relatively to the surface that you draw it, it's gonna push it in. So it's gonna be more like a flat surface. So let's do that. Z intensity set to 50, and let's go ahead and draw another one. And you see from this angle, it's a little bit more like a squashed version of these blobby ones. And that's pretty cool. One last thing that I want to do is I want to be able to draw these lines like this, but I want to do it closer to each other. The problem is if I do it right now like this, if I do another one and I do it too close, ZBrush is going to just either edit that curve or just add to it, right? So what I want to do so that I can avoid that is going to the curve snap distance. So this slider right here is the one that will snap. So you see if I get closer, and there we go. So that little line right there, that distance, that is the equivalent to this snap distance. Okay, so when I get closer, obviously my pivot or my brush point is right here, and the curve is here. So this curve snap distance basically allows you to change when ZBrush is going to automatically snap into here. So yeah, what I'll do is change that to 0 or 1. So now if I get closer, you see nothing happens unless I get like right into the curve. So that allows me to do this and add those bits and pieces like closer to each other. All right, so let me just these ones look like leeches or something. You know what? It's not a bad idea for this guy. Maybe he's in the mountain. He's just collecting this. Anyway, let's go back. Cool. The undo history is just for what you did to the mesh. It's not going to affect the changes that you did to the brush. And if you want, you can just save this as as a brush to do this type of things. And of course, you can change the size of the brush, and that will change the size of the overall thing. Okay, so what I'll do is go back to V8, and I'm just going to start doing this. And now that I think of, it will probably be better. I'm just thinking that maybe it's better to allow ZBrush to just set a plane, and then I'll adjust it. So, sorry, going back to the picker, I'm just gonna go back to 1Z so that I can do this type of stuff for the base. And in fact, I'm just like, I could have simplified this process a lot more. So sorry, I'm just gonna give you another. You can do it the way that I'm doing it. I just thought about, it's gonna be simpler or easier if I just go ahead and turn off that that ring and do things directly on the mesh, right? So, and this is because I want to show you something else. So basically, if I do this, you'll see is based again on the on the plane. So that's why in this case, go back to the continuity is better, so that it just conforms to that shape. So that base, we'll use this for something else, but for what I'm just suggesting, it's going to be easier if I just go and do this type of thing, right? So it's just attached kind of like to the surface. If you want to actually push this out of the surface a bit more, so that it's not as embedded into the head, you can take this depth, which is under the brush palette depth, this thing right here, and you can push it up a bit. So if I do that, right, it's just going to be slightly off the, let's do it a bit more, right? So it's not going to be right in the inside the head. Okay, let's work with this. And I'm gonna leave the center without anything, so that I can fake a little bit of the of an asymmetric pattern. So I'm gonna, everything is symmetrical, and right in the middle, I'm just gonna tweak or change the symmetry, and then just add one there without the symmetry. So that's fine. Let's go ahead and do the same thing on top. It's kind of like the second pass of fair. Oops, let's do no symmetry. Okay, so that's fine. And then just to complete the effect, we can do some kind of like flyaways, third type of thing. And in that case, we have to switch back to 1C, so that we can do, you know, something like this, right? Maybe I just want to change the stroke a little bit, so that the end is a little bit shorter. So yeah, something like that. Maybe smaller brushes. Let's go to symmetry. And this one is based on the camera as well. So remember, it's just a plane based on that camera angle that you choose. So I'm just moving the camera as I draw these lines, so these blobs. I'm going to turn off symmetry and just add a couple here. Cool. I'm going to clear the mask. Obviously, every time that you draw a piece, yeah, it just creates a mask. But yeah, as you can see, this is relatively simple, nice and stylized way of doing it. I think I overcomplicated things at the beginning, but you know, you can still use these, of course, as a starting point. In fact, we can just use that, and maybe use the inflate or deflating things just to push it like that, polish things. If you want to keep it, but I think what we just did, this one is good as a blocking, but what we just did is better. So I'm gonna keep it. Maybe I'll do the scuba diving thing that I mentioned, so I'll just keep that. Let's make a folder called OR. I'm just gonna drop that in there. Go back. Yeah. All right, so we don't need that cube anymore. So I'm gonna hide that, delete hidden. And now we have this piece that we can go ahead and adjust. So I'm gonna select the symmetry or activate symmetry. And I'm gonna use the move topological with the AccuCurve. So obviously the move topological is going to respect that topology. that everything has a different polygroup, and I can just go ahead and start pushing things like so, just to adjust that so that is, you know, everything is connected. It doesn't look like floating pieces like that one there. I mean, this is a pretty boring, repetitive process, but it's not too bad. And you know, with the move topological makes it like really easy. I'm just pulling and pushing geometry. I'm gonna turn off symmetry, but just these ones. Same thing here. All right. I think that's pretty much it, really. Then we can use with the same AccuCurve. That's the reason the same move topological. The reason I enabled the AccuCurve, which for you would be under the brush palette curve, AccuCurve, is so that I can push kind of like the corners a bit more, or like the endpoints of this, and make like a sharper, like a sharper end. Okay, sometimes it's hard to grab the point. What I'll do here, because it looks pretty, you know, symmetrical, is just turn symmetry off, and then just adjust this manually to, again, to help with the symmetry. And I'll do the same thing here towards the sides. Alrighty, so I think that's looking pretty good. It's gonna look better once we subdivide it or smooth that those bits and pieces. And if you want to add a bit more of thickness towards the end, we can use the inflate brush and just do with symmetry a quick pass without pressing too hard around the base, and that's just going to tighten all of those things together a bit more. And then I'm going to use the move brush, the normal move brush, just to give it adjust the overall shape. I suppose that's the best way to put it. All right, so if I enable dynamic, you'll see we have a nice set of stylized hairs for the jacket. Not entirely sure if that looks what I wanted, so I might just inflate everything a bit more just to make it a bit more fluffy and polish. Yeah, I think I like more this type of blobbiness. It goes better with the overall, you know, style of the character rather than the pointy bits, and that's just like polishing things, which is fine. Cool. Let's do move topological just to adjust some of the overlapping areas, and that's just the result of that inflating and polishing things. Alrighty, I think that works well. Cool. So let's do another cool technique, which, you know, we can give it a brand to this jacket. Let me see the chat first. Yeah, the leeches were cool idea. I might do that. Cool, thank you. Glad you like the tutorials. No worries. Hey Alejandro, how's it going? It's been a while. Cool. So yeah, so for the brand of these, we could do. Let me just show you a cool technique. I'm gonna go ahead and append. Yeah, let's go ahead and append. Oh, you know what? This is another way of working. I suppose just to give you another workflow. So instead of appending things within the same tool, if you want to keep things clean and all you want to do is create something with a bunch of other subtools and that you're gonna delete or that you're not gonna use the whole, the full volume of that subtool, it's better to just use a separate tool. So what I mean by that is, it's gonna make more sense if I do it. Just click on the tool. I'm gonna use a plain 3D and make it a polymesh 3D, so I can work freely here, add a bunch of subtools, combine everything, and then just bring it back into the working tool. So for this one, what I wanna do is, I'm gonna subdivide this a few times, and then delete maybe more. Yep, and delete lower. So I have 1 million polygons in here. So it's just a plane. And I'll use this plane to kind of like design a logo or something for this character, create a nice topology and have everything ready, and then just utilize that as at the end. Okay. Let me see that. Hey, Maverick Designs, how you doing? Saludos de Argentina. Hey, Yoga. Alejandro, it's been a while. Cool, man. Thank you so much. Oh, really? That's really cool. Awesome. Yeah, so I'm gonna select the standard brush, and I'm gonna switch to RGB. Let's fill these with a white color and then use the black one, or maybe like a blue or something. It's easy on the eye. So yeah, so now I have this painting brush just to design essentially my logo for that jacket. So it's gonna be like a North Face jacket. So, but I'll make up the logo, right? One thing that I might do with this brush is change the RGB intensity, because at the moment, if I do this, it's basically is using the opacity of my pen, right? So if I right click and take the focal shift and just push it a little bit towards the left, so the negative values, I'll have like a sharper version of that. But I'm still using that pressure sensitivity, which, if you're doing something with opacity, or if you're actually using polypaint to texture your model, it's great. But in this case, I want like a Sharpie, right? So I'm gonna undo that. I'm gonna go to the brush palette, and here in the brush palette, I have the tablet pressure. So if I click on tablet pressure, you have the size, the intensity, RGB, all of that. So I'm gonna click on RGB, and this is kind of like what ZBrush is using to determine how much color is being applied depending on how much I press on my tablet. So if I remove this or just push it here towards the top, ZBrush is going to say there's no transition. Everything is going to be 100%. So I can just do that, and it's like a Sharpie, and I'm not pressing hard or anything. The pressure just is going to be determining the size of the brush, right? So pressing softly, and then harder is just going to change the size. And if you want, you can also change that. You can go to brush, tablet again, and you have this size. So this is what ZBrush is using. You'll see that it starts almost, we can just push this one down, and that way I start with something like this. So that's how you can customize that a bit more. Cool. All right. So what I'll do is I'm gonna make a logo, which at this point I don't know what it is. I'm gonna use symmetry. Let's do kind of like the head of that guy. something like that. I'm gonna use white color just to kind of like erase it. It's gonna be the eyes. Yeah, I don't know. Like we'll keep the logo exploration simple. Yep. I just want to do something with cuts to show you the technique that I want to show you, but this could be anything. That's not good. Okay, I'm gonna do something like this, then that's the face of the guy. Yep, something like that. I think that's better. All right. Anyway, I could spend a lot of time just playing around with this, but I think you get the idea. It's just like designing something with polypaint, defining it in here. So that would be the logo. But then the technique would be, okay, once you have this, there are a few things you can do. So one thing you can do is, for instance, go to polygroups. And we can go to group from polypaint. So if I click on group from polypaint and enable polyframe now, it's barely visible, but it's there. Let's turn off the line so you can see it's there. So that is a polygroup based on the colors, and that's the reason I started with a flat color and then use a very bright blue, right? So that you can do this type of thing really easy. So now you have that. You could have just designed everything with a masking, you know, just by doing this and then convert it into a polygroup. The reason I prefer doing it this way is because with a mask, sometimes even if you use a sharp mask like this one, like this, and then you start doing this by mistake, you might just click once on the mask, and that actually blurs the mask. And then if you continue, then you have different levels of blurriness. So I prefer to just do polypaint like I just did and achieve that from this point. Let me actually change the color, holding Control and Shift. Just gonna change the color so you can see that the color is actually there. Let me see this screen, the chat. Cam on the way. Don't know what that means. Hey, good morning, Agent 47. Good morning. Awesome, thank you. Glad you like it. Alrighty, so there, like I said, there are two ways, but there are multiple ways, but I'm gonna show you two ways. One that is automated in case you wanna just get something going quickly that works, and the other one is a bit more manual so that you actually have control over what you do with this logo for the jacket. So yeah, so I'm gonna duplicate it to show you both techniques. So I'm gonna duplicate that, and I'm just gonna go ahead and isolate that bit, delete hidden. So we have like single-sided mesh that we can go ahead and polish by groups. So let me get closer. So I'm going to polish by groups just to make that edge a bit better. So it's yeah, it's like a bit flatter or cleaner. And with the symmetry enable, we can go to geometry. Zero Measure. I have all my Zero Measure tools here, but just to show you in the Zero Measure, I'm gonna leave the adapt on so that it adapts even though there's not like crevices, and I'm gonna set the polygon target count to 2,000 or 1,000 polygons, so 1. So this number is in the thousands, so if you put 1, is equivalent to 1,000, right? So if you want less than that, you have to do point. I don't know if it actually does it. I've never done that. 0.5. Yeah, 0.1. So that would 0.1 would be 100, but yeah, let's keep it to 1. And yeah, let's go ahead and click on Zero Measure. That's it. So this is the automated version, right? Let's turn on that. So this is the result. It's not great. So we can do a few things to help the Zero Measure. The reason it might, have trouble creating a nicer topology than this, it's a couple of reasons. One is there are holes, or there are holes. I mean, the whole face, let's say it's a hole, so that creates an issue. But we can just try a few things. We can just turn off the adaptive. Should help a little bit. So it's not trying to adapt the size of the polygons to the different areas. So that helps a little bit. We can smooth things out. But yeah, it's not great. So let's go ahead and do auto groups just to have different groups in this case. Not that it really helps or affects anything, but what I'll do is I'm going to isolate this, and I'm going to cut this like that and assign a new polygroup. So Control W, and that is just so that ZBrush knows that, okay, I don't mind if it's like a continuation here, or like just basically I need a loop in here. And then you can also tell ZBrush, just to help the Zero Measure process, to have more loops or in specific areas. So we can use the slice, slice curve to do this. So I'm gonna hold Control and Shift and do that. So I'm just gonna try to help the Zero Measure telling it, okay, this is where I want some lines just going this way. And I'm gonna mirror and weld it so that we have it both sides. And that's it. We can just tell ZBrush to keep groups. We don't have to smooth it because they're pretty smooth. And let's go ahead and actually let's click on half. That should also help. Maybe we're pushing it too hard with the number of polygons. So let's just keep it simple. Half, adapt, and Zero Measure. This should give us a better result. There we go. So it's not too bad. We can keep doing it. So let's do another Zero Measure. So it's every time that we do it with the half enabled, ZBrush tries to halve the amount. So that's the idea here. We can also polish things. Oops, polish by groups. Right. And at this point, we can just go ahead and create a single polygroup and do it one more time. And we have a pretty decent topology. Maybe we can have, let's see. I think it's good enough. I mean, you can separate these ones and have different qualities of topology. Let me just show you how that's done. So I'm gonna auto group these. I'm gonna isolate this group. I'm gonna split hidden, and then I'm just going to run the Zero Measure just in this area or in this mesh. Whoops. There we go. So this is pretty low res, and this is pretty low res. Okay. We can zero mesh this as well. We can do same, and then just try to get like different configurations of that until we get something that we like. But I think this one just works. Again, this is like a quick version of it. And then we can take that, Control E. Well, I have that mapped to Control E because I just remember from Photoshop, that's how you merge layers. So you can merge from the top to bottom. So I have that mapped to the letter E, but for you guys would be under the merge down. All right, so basically that's it, right? We have like a clean topology. I mean, this could be better, but we have something that works nicely, and then we can use the dynamic to add thickness to it, right? Anyway, that's one way to do it. I'm going to show you the one that I would prefer to do in this case, which is more manual, and then you have more control over it, and I think you'll enjoy it. It's pretty cool. So it has to do with ZSpheres and manual retopology in ZBrush, but it's pretty easy. So let me see if there's any questions coming my way. Cool. All right. So I'm going to select that original plane, turn this off, right? And what I'll do is turn on the polypane, right? So this is basically the first thing we did was just polypane that. I'm going to go ahead and append a ZSphere. And this ZSphere is what we're going to be using for as the base for the retopology. So I'm going to just move that out of the way so that we don't see it, or like it's behind that plane. Or you can put it anywhere, it doesn't really matter. And with the ZSphere selected, we're going to go to the topology, right? So this topology is a section or a sub palette that is only available if you have the ZSphere selected. If you select like the plane, you'll see there's nothing in there. So you have to select the ZSphere and go to topology. And yeah, that basically, if you enable symmetry, you can click on edit topology. Nothing happens, but now whatever you do, instead of editing that ZSphere, we're gonna be adding points of the topology. So let's just go with a small brush size, and we have symmetry enable. So I'm gonna click on here, just holding the control key, just to establish that first point, and then add one in there. Hang on. Edit topology. Why is it not letting me do it? Oh, sorry. I had it in move. So you have to go to draw. That's the first thing, right? So you edit topology, but you have to be drawing that topology. I just had it in move when I actually move the sphere. So I'm gonna click here to start a point, and then do this like that, and that just creates a quad. And now I can use the move tool in here to just adjust this. So you see, it's just manually doing that topology, which is a lot easier. So and you can do, if you want to start from here, you hold control, and that's how I can start closing those gaps. And because I have symmetry enabled, it just snaps. I'm just gonna quickly do this. And then I'll show you how we can clean it up. So that's that. We can also do this in the same way. We just need to connect it first and then delete the kind of like the in between. So hold control, click, just to add that point in there. And then you can go ahead and hold the Alt key and delete that connection. So we now have just this line. Hold control again to start from here. And I'm just gonna do 1, 2, 3. Let me just think about this. Let's just do a cross first. It's probably easier. And now we can just divide this. So going like this. If you click in the middle of, like in an edge, ZBrush automatically is going to add that point in there, which is pretty cool. Right. And then we just need to connect this. And I'm adding an extra point just to make them all quads. Done. That's pretty easy. So let's use the move brush now, or like the move option here, to just adjust this and make it, a bit nicer. I mean, in this case of like the eyes that are kind of like circles or circular pieces, you can just bring in a cylinder and then just delete everything but one face, and you'll know that it is 100%, you know, a perfect circle. But I think let's just make this smaller. I think this works fine. All right, and I'm just gonna adjust this as well a little bit. And what I'm trying to do at this point is just make sure that the distribution is, you know, there's like the distance between these points are, in an average, they're like almost the same everywhere. And of course, I'm gonna add some loops in the middle, which you can do with this tool as well. But you know, since this is a nicely set up loop, we can use the sim modeler in a second. All right. So how this works now, once you have completed your, you know, drawing literally your topology, you can go to the adaptive skin, this one right here, and you can preview it. Before I preview it, I'm gonna take the dynamic resolution to 0. Otherwise, ZBrush is gonna preview it with a dynamesh, and because it is a plane right now, it's gonna be a mess. And I don't want to have dynamesh, I just want to have a clean topology. And you can also change the density. So if I preview it with density of 2, it's gonna show me this subdivided by 2. So I'm gonna set it to 1. Preview, go to solo, just to check, and that's our single piece of geometry, which is pretty cool. And yep, so sorry, I was in solo. I'm gonna click on create adaptive skin. That's it. And yeah, we have a nice adaptive skin for our logo type of thing. And then I'm gonna use the C modeler to right click on an edge, go to insert edge loop. Yep, or you know, we can add more actually. So multiple edge loops, click and drag, and we'll have those edge loops in there. And let's uncrease everything so that we don't have any creasing. And that's it. We have a nice, let's do a polygroup as well. So we have a nice nice base for the logo. Let's add some text as well, just to make it more logo-ish, and then we apply it to the jacket of this guy in here. So for that, let's just use something else. I'm gonna use the Z plugin. I'm gonna go to 3D text and vector shapes. So you could actually, that's another good point, right? You could just make the vector shape or that logo in InDesign or in Illustrator or somewhere else in Photoshop, and then just bring in a vector shape, and that would be the same thing. This one is just a cleaner, more controlled version of it. Will that be wrapped around this sphere? The sphere? What sphere? Oh, you mean like once we put the logo in the jacket? Is that your question? If it's going to conform to the surface? Is that your question? Anyway, let me know. I'm gonna click on new text, and this is gonna be the name of the jacket. It's gonna be Dude brand. Dude exclamation mark, and then hit enter. Yes, yep, okay, I'll show you. Yeah, the idea of like a clean topology is basically so that I can make it conform nicely to the geometry. No worries. Okay, so now let's put this Z plugin here on the right. We have this, let's go into solo as well. So we have that mesh, and we can tweak it a little bit. I'm just gonna click on the type of font. I want something a bit fat. Something that goes with the, you know, with the, here we go. Go UI. This one works. Cool. So I'm gonna change the extrusion. So I'm going to set the extrusion to 0. That way it's just a single-sided mesh like the face. And we can change the resolution as well. So just add a bit more points in here. If you add bevel in right now, it's not going to work because there's nothing else. But yeah, I think this is pretty much all there is to it. And that's it. So I'm going to use the gizmo to place this nicely in here. Now, this obviously has triangles, so if you want, we can give it a go. I don't think I'm going to do it, or I don't need to do it, but just so you know, if I duplicate this, go into solo mode, this thing right here, we can try to go to the series measure and create a new, like a new geometry for this. With 5,000 polygons, that should be fine, but I will detect the edges. That would be one way to go about it, and keep creases, although there's no creases at the moment, so we can just crease by polygroup, so it just creases all the edges. Let's see what this does. I don't know if it's gonna work, but pretty good. I think it works just fine. So now we can go ahead and do half to reduce it. Yeah, pretty cool. All right, so I'm gonna use the move just to adjust it. Again, remember, this is just an automated way of doing things with the series measure. So if it's not perfect, it's it's not a big deal. You can always do what I just did there, like manually adjust things. Oh wow, that's a bit weird. Hang on, let me undo a few times, go back and adjust it in here at this level. It seems like there is a couple of polygons in here, so I'm going to hold Control and Shift to isolate it. No, it's just one in here. Yeah, so you're going to delete hidden. Do that. This one right here can be fixed as well, so we can use the C modeler to target this polygon or this face. Right click, delete that. Go back to the move brush, whoops, and adjust it. So a little bit of cleaning up to do, but overall it's it's a lot easier to just do the whole thing manually, and we have a pretty decent topology for this, so that's cool. And with things like this, if you're really particular about having this perfectly aligned or whatever, you can just do things like masking this area, invert the mask, bring in the gizmo, center to the unmasked areas, and then just flatten that line. Right, so it is perfect, but I'm not into that. I'd like to get things that work, and that's it. So we have that now, and we can place this. This is the logo for the jacket, remember? I think I didn't delete that bit, I just separated it. So let's delete that. And I'm just gonna merge these two together. And obviously there is a, let's, hang on. Let's split hidden. I'm gonna add a bit more geometry to this thing here, so I can just do, I can go ahead and crease polygroup so that we can keep the edges nicely there, and subdivide, delete hidden. So now we have more topology, but the shape is pretty much the same, and that would help with one of your questions there, like how to project it. All right, so now we can just merge things together, and there we go. So now this is our logo. Cool. So all of that was just to be able to have a single subtool. Let's rename it logo. That we can copy, go to our working file, yeah, and just paste it. Oops, not append, paste it. Paste it in there. I don't know where it is. There. So now we have that that logo. I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate that logo and put it in the original folder, and then just put the other one just below the jacket. All right, so I just did a duplicate to keep that there, and I'll place this jacket, the logo, on the right hand side of the jacket, like from the character's perspective. Go into symmetry, and let's just try to position this around there. Right, roughly where you want it to, you want the logo to be. I think that's fine. We might do another type of logo, like a simpler one for maybe for the shoulder or the arm or something like that. Alrighty, so that's it. Now what we can do is project it so that it conforms to the shape of whatever you have underneath. Now we can actually make it conform to, let's say, let me just show you. You know, somewhere there, right? So that these letters actually follow that gap. We can totally do that. I'll show you how. But obviously in this case doesn't really make sense, but you can totally do it. So the way that works is super simple. Is using one of the brushes in ZBrush. So I'm gonna select with, okay, so this is how it works. with the mesh that you want to project selected, you go ahead and choose the Z project, this brush right here. And this brush works based on the camera angle. So if you have something that the projection is outside of what's behind it, is going to be a mess. In other words, let me explain that quickly. Let's say that you have, this is your surface, right? And then you have a plane, right? That you want to project, right? So you want to project these so that this plane conforms to that sphere. Right? It's basically, this example is basically what the logo or the icon of the brush is, right? So if you project that and the plane is larger than the surface that you're projecting things into, let's say this is roughly what is covered by the sphere, right? This area is going to be projected nicely, but the rest is just going to be pushed against the infinity. There's nothing, right? So essentially you end up with, let's say, a plane that conforms nicely to the sphere around here, and then a flat version there. Okay, so this is just to say that whatever you project, make sure that you have enough geometry behind it, or like the volumes that are behind whatever you're projecting are larger. In this case, it's not a big deal because the jacket is huge compared to the logo. The next thing you need to think about is the size of your brush, because this ultimately works as a, you know, like almost like a click and drag. So you click and drag and projects based on that point. So you won't see much difference, but if I click and drag now, you see that's, you know, I'm clicking and dragging and projecting things like that, which is pretty easy and, you know, pretty cool to do. And of course, this is a single-sided mesh. So what we can do is enable dynamic with a bit of thickness, and now we have a nice logo, right, that conforms to that jacket, which is pretty cool. So again, you can totally do it. I just, you know, I want to place it in a better place. So there, that's what I want to have this logo. Let's do the same thing. And so now it's conforming to that area. Let's click dynamic and add a bit of thickness, which is pretty cool. So everything is conforming nicely. Awesome. Let's just tweak. Let's just tweak a couple of things here on the dynamic palette so you can see what I'm doing. Dynamic subdivision. So right now all I have is just thickness, but you can add a bit of subdivision. So adding smooth subdivision, that makes it, you know, look a lot smoother. I'm also going to remove a little bit of that sharpness by clicking on the post subdivision and smoothing things out. Oh, I have to remove the creasing because those edges are creased automatically. So I'm gonna uncrease all. There we go. And then just smooth this out a bit. And this is the great thing about the dynamic subdivision, and the reason I created like a clean version for that logo. Okay. Alrighty. Cool. Not too bad. Maybe it is too thick actually. All right. So yeah, that's a simple way to do it. Another way that it's a slightly different workflow, but maybe that's something that we can do for, let's say, another like a patch here on the arm, is to do it directly from the surface. So this is a simple way to do it, like I said, and it gives you a lot of control basically. But another way to do it would be, let's go ahead and select the arm. How are we doing with time? Oh, okay. There's a couple more things I wanted to do, but I think, yeah, let's do this in the arm. I'm going to turn off symmetry, and I'm going to use the masking brush. This masking brush is just a custom mask brush that I created, and I'm going to hold Control and click and paint this around. All right, so that would be one of the patches, or like another logo thing that goes attached to the jacket. You could do that anywhere. So literally, if you want something that conforms to, let's say, these wrinkles here, you can do that, right? And it will just be a mask of that area. But again, this is where I want to place it, and there's a lot of surface changes. But anyway, you can just do that, and we can hold Control and W to assign a polygroup. We can duplicate that mesh, or that, yeah, you could have done that before. So let's do auto groups again. All right. So basically, if I go into solo mode, I just duplicated that thing, right? That's the same subtool as the arms, but it has that polygroup. I'm gonna delete hidden, or delete lower, so that, not delete hidden, sorry, delete lower, so that we baked the amount of subdivision levels, and then we can just isolate this bit, delete hidden now. So now we have like a single-sided mesh, but as you can see, it just conforms or maintains whatever surface was extracted from. I guess you can also do the extracting. I'll show you that as well. This is just kind of like another more controlled version of it. Cool. So once you have that, you can maybe polish by groups a little bit, and yeah, and then just do a retopology. So zero measure, half, let's polish by groups again. Right, and then use dynamic, add a thickness, and now we have that patch that kind of like conforms to that area. So this is something that I would use if I cannot project what I want to project from a single camera angle. So if you want to have something like, in this case, this patch that conforms to a curved area, and you want to follow that curve, the projection, the ZProject, is not going to work. So just to show you one more thing, or another technique that you can just use and do the same thing, let's do another one for this arm, maybe. Let's just do it here as well. I'm going to use the mask lasso with the with this maybe just duplicate it again just so that we can work on another version. Yeah. So I'm going to solo mode. Before I do that, I want to hold Control. And this is that logo, although it doesn't look right from that angle. Yeah, something like this, and then we can refine it like so. So that one has like a bit of curvature, which is fine. You can sharpen that if you hold Control and Alt at the same time and click on the mask, but you can also do it from the masking palette. You can click on Sharpen Mask. That sharpens that mask. So this other technique, again, there's multiple ways of doing it in ZBrush, so it's whatever feels right for your workflow, and depending on the circumstances, you might choose one over the other. So in this case, I would use this technique just for the fact that it is a curvature around the arm, and well, this case is not that bad, but if it was like all around it, maybe if it was like a full loop, it's impossible to do it with the project with the Z project because it does it based on the camera. So with this one, we can go to the sub palette, go to extract, right? And if I click on extract, ZBrush is going to take that mask and extract it. And this is just a preview. If I move the camera, it disappears, right? But I can show you what it's going to do. So what I can do is same thing. We can go with 0 in the thickness. So that will create 0 thickness, essentially a flat plane. Click on extract and you see it is a plane over that area. And I can click accept, and that way it creates, we can make these arms. I'm just gonna put it here in the originals. So yeah, it just creates that nice plane. Clear that mask so it doesn't have any mask, and we can just go ahead and do the same thing that we did with the circle. We can remesh it by half. We can polish by groups actually a little bit, and we can crease and keep creases so that we can make sure that it's sharp. And just gonna give it a helping hand, just making that corners a little bit sharper. Cool. And then dynamic, same deal. Add a bit of thickness. And it's not perfect just because I polished a few times, but it's just a tiny bit. All right, so now we have those markings, and again, you can keep those separate, so you can subdivide them and then use polypaint to add details or like project something over that. In fact, let's just, that one, I'm not gonna use that one, that was just to show you something else. So this one, for instance, it's a little bit cleaner. What I can do is go to my folder, take my logo, duplicate that, and I'm gonna take it out. I'm gonna rotate it, oops, symmetry off, rotate it 90 degrees. And this time I'm just gonna use the head, the icon, delete hidden. And I'm just gonna place that one in there. Okay, and the same deal. As long as you have, let's say, this patch or anything that is visible, ZBrush is going to use that Z project to do that. So I'm just gonna do that. Dynamic thickness, just to add a bit of thickness. On crease all, just to make it a bit softer. And let's take this guy as well. Crease all. make it a bit softer. Go into solo mode, and we can take advantage of this loop actually, although it's not a great loop. We can soften it a bit more. And use the select lasso. I'm going to hold Control and Shift to isolate just this bit. Control W to assign a new polygroup. Right? And then we can use the C modeler. Right click on the face. And oh, before I do that, actually, let's just do QMesh polygroup all. If I do it right now, it's just going to basically extrude. It's going to give volume over a plane, which is not something that I want to do. So instead, I can just split this. So I'm going to click and drag, and then hold Control, and that basically gives me a new loop or a new piece that I can just, do that. Maybe place it in there. So with a little bit of a gap. So these are actually two pieces of geometry. I just extracted that loop. And then if I want to, I can auto group now. So you see it's like two different pieces, and I can split the groups, or I can say isolate. Oops. Let's use the move brush. Hold Control and Shift to isolate this bit, and then I can split hidden, right? So split hidden, and then this is a separate mesh now. So this is another way to create that. So with this one selected, or yeah, with this subtool selected, I can go ahead and play with the thickness. But if I want to, this is the reason I left kind of like a gap, just to show you something else that you can do with dynamic. So you can play with the thickness. Here is probably a good idea to show you this. Right, so you have this gap. You can play around with the thickness, or you can just take literally the gizmo and then push that subtool, that border down, so that it just, you don't have that gap. Or you can use the offset, and the offset is basically, if this is your surface, let's say, yeah, this line is your surface. Actually, right now I think it's doing it in here. So this is your surface. Right now this is set to 0. If you add, or like if you go to the positive values with the offset, ZBrush is going to take that entire volume and it's going to push it up, or in negative values is going to push it down, or like below that line. So I can take that offset and play around with the position of that thickness quite easily. So that's the reason I just wanted to show you that. So I'm just going to push that down a bit. And yeah, I think that looks pretty decent. And so all of those bits and pieces are actually using dynamic subdivision, but they all have different settings. So one thing I can do, so what I mean by different settings, they all have different thickness, offset. So if I select this guy, it has a different thickness. This guy has a different thickness. But fortunately, they all share the same subdivision level. So one thing you can do is turn subdivision or smooth subdivision to everything, right? And then we can just go ahead and apply that thickness for each one of these pieces. So now we don't have any subdivision levels, but we have a we have thickness for all those subtools on this patch. So what I can do now is bring this closer together. I'm going to hold, in my case, Control E. So now we have everything into one single subtool, right? And then I can go to dynamic, turn off thickness, but then play around with the smooth subdivision for all of those. So that way I can control in one single subtool everything, which is cool. So that's it. And let's go ahead and give this some color as well. So maybe fill object, and I'm gonna auto group things, and I'm gonna isolate. Isolate the border and the logo, and give it a same color as this guy. Cool. So that's it. That's the patches. All right. Let's see. I think we have time for a couple more techniques that are pretty cool. Let me know if there is any questions in the chat. No, all good. Oh, by the way, this is maybe it's a good time to do it right now. So I have a discount code for everyone that's interested. I'm gonna copy and paste it here. So today is my birthday, actually. So I just decided to give you guys 50% off across the entire store of like the ZBrush brushes and stuff like that. So what I'm putting right now in the chat, that's just a code that you can use to get 50% off in anything that you want in this store. So let me share the link. Thank you. Yeah, so it's just for today, for a few hours. Well, for the rest of today, as a little happy birthday type of thing. It's in there. So yeah, you can just go and anything that you see in that website, in that store, you can just put that code and it's 50% across the entire store. So hopefully that'll be good. Thank you. Thank you so much. Alrighty, so yeah, we have 30 minutes left, so I can just show you a couple more things. I was thinking this guy is kind of like you know, like an explorer type of thing. Oh, actually, before I do that, let me fix two things. So the head and the shirt, I just want to combine those. So these two, because they have, I'm using dynamic subdivision, but they have, they're disconnected, and I want them to be the same. So Control E, in my case, again, this is just to merge things together. So that's what I have. Let's go ahead and turn off dynamic, and then I'm gonna use the gizmo to remesh by union, and that way we have a watertight mesh. So in other words, if I hide this, you see there's no intersection. I mean, there was an intersection, and in that intersection, ZBrush just connected those meshes, kind of like a Boolean operation. Great. So now we can use symmetry. Go to ZRemesher in here, and we can click on ZRemesher to remesh this. Maybe don't use half. Let's go 5,000 polygons. I think that's pretty much what I had anyway. Let's do half of that. All right. Yeah, I think something like this. So that's enough. Let's change the color. Maybe we can go for something brighter now. I mean, we have the same color here. Let's do dynamic as well. Fill object. All right, cool. So yeah, for those of you who weren't here last couple of weeks, a couple of weeks ago, these wrinkles and all of that, we did that with. So you can watch that with this pack. Cause where is it? Here, rocks. I lost it. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, so this is a pack of brushes, 50 odd something brushes, that I created to do that specific type of patterns, and so this is what we use for that. If you're interested, those are in that link that I share. Yeah, so you can use this for anything related to this, you know, cloth and drapery. I just used it in this more stylized version just to show you that it can be used either in this type of context where you're doing like a more stylized character or anything, or it can be used as well in something that's a bit more realistic, like the I don't know if you guys saw it, but let me just share the link, because this is one of the projects that I did for my 3D snippets, and it is a project that I also use as a kind of like a testing ground as I was developing it. I use the brushes in this project, so just to show you a couple of different styles. Yeah, so that's the link to this thing in my ArtStation. So this guy, the one with no name, this shaman creature. So the just so you know, right? Like the clothing. So yeah, most of the clothing pieces, right? They were actually created in ZBrush, like the bases, and then I simulated that in Marvelous Designer, just to get the nice simulation with the drapery and all of that. For the more complex ones, some of the more complex ones are the ones that are kind of like around the volumes of the body, like the pants, the shirt, some of the pieces in here. The simple ones, like these pieces of cloth draping or just hanging on top of the shoulders, and the big cloth, I think this one as well, can't remember now. Those were actually simulated in ZBrush with the dynamics palette. And then whatever I did outside of ZBrush, like whatever I did in Marvelous Designer, I brought it back into ZBrush, and I detailed those and added, all of those wrinkly areas and folds and all of that. I just sharpened everything and clean everything up in ZBrush using those brushes. So yeah, just to show you that, bit of two different styles. Anyway, going back to this guy, we have, like I said, 30 minutes. Let's go ahead and do, I thought something else. I thought this guy could be some kind of like explorer type of thing. So we can do, let me block something up very quickly. I'm not gonna walk you through all of this just because I want to do it really quickly and see if I can, if it's worth doing it. And then, and I'll tell you what I'm doing, and then I'll just cover it a little bit easier. But it's just easier for me if I don't necessarily talk over this. Because it would be kind of like what, the speed at which I would work if I wasn't just talking. So I just want to do a couple of things, see if this is worth pursuing as a like a backpack thing. And just so you know, this is literally what I do when I'm designing stuff. In a professional environment, I will do this type of things, block things out, testing, do a quick render, paint over. But as you can see, it just takes no time to set this up like that. And then I can say, okay, maybe, yeah, this is actually quite cool. It's worth pursuing this or not. So that's the great thing about being able to block things out. So yeah, cool. So let's build this one up nicely with a couple of techniques that I can show you that are really good. So let's append a cube, right? Let's do symmetry, and let's remesh that by half. And then let's polish. Actually, let's use Q-cube. Q-cube is always a good idea. It's just a simple cube, and we're gonna scale that up. We can also subdivide with the smooth, or the subdivide smooth modifier off, and delete lower, just so we get more geometry to play around with. And this is gonna be like the backpack. It's almost like a cube. Alrighty, so that's a good base. We can add a couple of pockets and stuff like that. So let's just duplicate this guy, move it on the side. Maybe on this side actually. So this is gonna be some kind of pocket. Go into solo mode. And to do kind of like the flap of that pocket, we can just split it. So let's use the same technique that I used for the edge, the round edge of that patch before. So just to show you what I actually did. So with the zero measure selected, I'm just gonna tag, let's say, all of these polygons, which would be, like I said, that flap. Maybe this one's at the back as well, even though that you don't see that. That's kind of like the flap. Maybe that. Yeah, something like this. So if I right click on a face with the C modeler with the Q mesh selected and the polygroup all, that basically is going to extrude things. So if I click and drag, it just extrude that, which, you know, that's something that you can use and it would work just fine. If you want to keep everything within the same tool, I suppose, the same mesh, that will be something you can do. What I actually did, or what I want to do, is extract it. So if I click and drag, if I press the shift key, it's just going to push things out, right? It's just going to move those selected faces across, or like along the normals. If I just do the normal click and drag, this is what it's doing. And if I hold control, it's going to extract that based on the normal. So I'm just going to extract it a tiny bit there, right? And now I can just go ahead and do auto group. So now we'll have two polygroups. It's not very easy to see. There we go. And I can just hold control and shift to isolate this, split hidden. So now I have another piece, like an individual piece that I can, using without solo. If I want to push this one in a little bit, we can do that with the same technique. So click and drag and then hold shift, and that way it just pushes things out, in and out from the normal. But I'm just gonna push it in a tiny bit and then extrude to add that thickness. And then we can use the gizmo to maybe overlap things a bit more. Perfect. So that's it. We can also maybe with the gizmo actually mask those corners and then just make that a bit more curved, right? Let's go ahead and do dynamic. Select this dynamic, and we can now go ahead. I actually want to add a bit more thickness to this, so we can inflate, and we can also add a poly loop here, right in the middle. And yeah, so we'll use the move brush now. Just want to adjust this a bit. Or actually, before I adjust that, I actually can take this and add another edge loop. Oops, right click, single edge loop, so I can drag it around there. And now I can use the normal move brush to adjust this. And just give it a bit of a, so it looks a bit more organic, basically. Alrighty. So now we can merge these two together. We can also, let's give it like a little button here with one of these, with the IMM parts. No, not that one, sorry. The IMM clothing hard surface stuff. So, no, not that one. Where is it? I'm thinking about something that comes with ZBrush that has the buttons. Where is it? Oh, here, IMM parts. Pretty obvious. So I'll use maybe something like this. Relatively large piece. So the only thing that I'm thinking of is that this piece is going to have a lot of geometry compared to the other piece. So maybe not that one. Maybe this one. Yeah, that one is pretty cool. Like that. All right, clear that mask. And then this is already using the dynamic subdivision. We can add maybe another one and mirror and weld. So now we have both sides with that large, pocket. And then we can take this also dynamic subdivision so that we know, it's a little bit softer. Let's go ahead and take this and use the deformer. So I'm going to use the soft deformer again, and I'm going to add a few points. That's fine. And let's go ahead and take those. Just move it closer like that. I'm going to go a little bit faster here because I already kind of like explained what these ones do. Right. I want to keep kind of like that squarish structure. I think it's cool. So accept. All right. So that's gonna be fine. 15 minutes. All right, let's do the kind of like a nice rolled up backpack and maybe the straps, and we just leave it there. Cool. Thank you so much. What's my opinion about iClone and Character Creator? Yeah, I think they're really cool. I don't use iClone. I use Character Creator. Yeah, I use that quite a bit to just set up like base meshes, especially like poses and stuff like that, and then I'll bring that into ZBrush and sculpt around it. But it's a really good tool. I don't use it for let's say for game characters or anything like that. I rarely use the topology from Character Creator. I just use that to quickly create a base mesh that I can start working on and then bring into ZBrush and sculpt on top of that, dynamesh it and all of that. But yeah, it is fantastic. Alrighty. So I'm gonna use a similar technique to what I did for the logo, and I'm sure you're gonna like this one. Let's go ahead and append a plane 3D. Yeah. I'm gonna rotate it 90 degrees. And I'm just gonna place it here. So this is going to be kind of like a drawing board for what I'm going to do. So I'm going to select the curve brush, the one right now is still using the settings. Actually, let's do a quick save. Is still using the settings from what we originally did for that fluffy area, right? So I'm just going to reset the curve, and that's the normal curve brush. And I'm going to just do this. Right? Maybe that is too much. Let's keep it simple and do. Let's do it like that. Yeah, something like this. Let me try a couple of these ones. All right. Yeah, something like this I think is fine, right? So basically what I did is use a plane so that we have this swirly thing right in one plane. And now we can just go ahead and split on mask points. So we can delete that plane. We don't need it now. And we have this piece that we can polish so that we don't, we have something a bit softer for the end bits. We can also use the move topological just to adjust this. a little bit. And then, because this has like a relatively nice topology, oh, whoops, hang on, mirror and well. Ah, sorry, let me undo that. I adjusted things without symmetry. Activate symmetry, there we go. So now yeah, everything that I do is happening in both sides. Cool. So yeah, so now we can hide or mask half of this. Almost half. It doesn't matter, I'm gonna do a zero measure anyway. But I think it's fine. So mask that. Bring back everything. And I'm just gonna push it like so. So now we have this roll up thingy for this guy. Can put it bottom. I think at the top is fine. Right? And this is kind of like similar to the character I did for the Ultimate ZBrush Guide course. But you know, I kind of like that idea. Alrighty. So this has a pretty decent topology, both sides, as in at the ends. So what I can do in here is bring in the C modeler, right click, insert multiple edge loops, click and drag. Oops, hang on. It's doing, let me mirror and well, I don't know why it's creating. You know what? There might be something going on in the inside that I cannot see. So I'm just gonna auto group that, and I'm just gonna do another zero measure. Yeah, that's probably best. I'm just gonna inflate things to tighten things up and reduce the size a bit. Alrighty. So yeah. So the only thing that when I extruded or I moved the points, I must have grabbed something inside and created like a weird loop in there. So just a quick zero measure with polyloops, with the polygroups, just gives us that. I'm just gonna do a couple of straps, just holding this thing together. So for that we can, with this symmetry, again, we can mask. Let's mask an area like this, like that. Invert that. Maybe that's too little. Yeah, that much. Invert that. Bring in the gizmo, and we can enable local symmetry, so that we can scale like these two pieces at the same time, or these areas. Maybe blur the mask a bit, like that. And of course, let's go into solid mode. Now we can go ahead and use the curve tube again. Click and drag, and then hold shift. Oops. Larger brush size. Hold shift. Oh, it's not gonna do it necessarily. If you hold shift, basically when you do this and you hold shift, it's going to wrap it around. But in this case, because it has that kind of like wrapping it around itself, it's just gonna be easier if I go ahead and append a ring 3D, and then just use that as the strap, or not the strap, the kind of strap. So I can deflate it just to reduce the size. And then I'm going to use the move brush just to adjust it and make it look a little bit more organic. All right, mirror and weld. We have two now. We can go ahead and merge these two together as well. Apply dynamic subdivision so this nicely set up in there. And then just to wrap it up, we can add those straps. So I'm gonna append a ring 3D, which is what I used just before. And this is also what I used for the quick blocking. So I'm gonna go for something like this. Like that. We can also use deformers. So I'm gonna use, let's try bend arc. I can bend this towards it a bit more. Let's use the move brush just to adjust that kind of like tension in there. And as I do this, by the way, I should have mentioned this. As I place this, it's not like the actual ring 3D is going to be the thickness of that strap. I'm just thinking about like the surface that you can see in here. I'm gonna delete everything else, so that's why it's kind of like intersecting the geometry at the moment. That's intentional, and I will show you why once I'm done with this. Maybe it just connects here at the back actually. All right, so with this selected, I don't know what I've been using this color. I can just isolate a few things. So I'm gonna use the C modeler to delete a few loops. So right click, delete edge loop complete. So I'm gonna delete a few. That one. Yeah. So basically, the ones that I'm deleting is just to establish the thickness of that strap. So I have that bit. So now I can hold the Control and Shift with the select lasso selected. Isolate that, invert, delete hidden. So now we have that nice strap following everything, but it's a single-sided mesh. We can also delete areas that we don't need, like this. Delete hidden. Right? Yeah, so now we have a pretty simple geometry. We can add some loops inside using the Insert Multi-Edge Loop tool. Click and drag. Let's go for something simple like this. Single polygroup. Let's use the dynamic subdivision. Also, let's increase those polygroups. Add that thickness in there. I'm gonna go for a pretty thick strap anyway, just to go with the stylization of the character. Yeah, much better. All right, so we have now that piece, and we can just go ahead and adjust this mesh. But obviously, the great thing about this is that this is a single-sided mesh, so it's pretty easy to just manipulate a few points, and we can see obviously in real time the effect that it has if we were to just apply the subdivision, right? Like the thickness as well as the smoothness. We can increase the smoothness to make it nicer. And we can squish things here. And I'm gonna rotate some of these areas. So I'm gonna go for something like this, blur the mask, invert, bring in the gizmo to the unmask areas. And I'm just gonna hold the Alt key to reposition that rotation of that gizmo, like so. And that way we can go ahead and rotate things like that. Alrighty. Oops. I think we are pretty much done. We just need to obviously mirror and weld that bit. And now from now on we can adjust whatever we do with symmetry. But yeah, that's it. That's pretty much it. Right on time. I'm just gonna assign some colors and probably some materials later on and wrap it up. But that's it. This is gonna be the hard part. The hard part, just trying to find like a nice complementary color for the backpack. Let's just keep it gray for now. I think gray is fine. But yeah, that's it. So hopefully the techniques and stuff that I showed you today have been of help. This basically wraps up this project. Like I said, I might just add a bit of, I don't know, like a nice render, a nice pose for this guy, and just call it a day. But that's it. Let me see the chat just to wrap it up. Wondering if you think the extender in the deformers would work for this as well. I'm not sure at which point you ask for that, but yeah, the extender works. You know, there's, like I said, 3 or 4 different ways of doing the same thing in ZBrush. So if that works for you, absolutely. Cool. All right. Thank you so much, guys. All right. Just a couple of things just before I let you go. Remember, if you weren't here, there is a code. I'm gonna reshare that in case you missed it. There is a code for a 50% discount in my store today for my birthday. So you can just grab that thing that I put in there. And then here is the link again. That code should give you 50% off the entire store, whatever you want. So if you want more than one item, you can just add it to the cart and then apply that code to everything that you're gonna get, and you will do it 50%. Yep. And also we have the winners for the art challenge that I've been running in Discord. So in just a few minutes after we finish with this stream, I'm gonna do a tiny little, like very short 5-10 minute stream in the Discord channel just to announce the winners of that, if you want to join us. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We'll see you in a couple weeks, and have a good one.